We are back with the final episode of our Austin Major coverage. The Major has wrapped up over the weekend. Vitality have secured dominance over CS2 for all time immemorial. Vincent has recovered from his sobriety issues to be here in person with us and Tony to cover what exactly went on. First off, Tony, Vincent, how you guys doing?
I too have overcome sobriety. Wait, scratch
Hold
that,
on.
reverse it. No, I'm doing all right. I had a beach day today, and you guys have been on your own thing, and Vincent having been at the Major, it's got to be pretty cool to be back.
Yeah, I had a ton of fun, but honestly, I'm glad to be home. It was like a very long event. Like normally events are a little bit shorter, like a day shorter. That one extra day, man, I didn't realize how big of a difference it would make.
That's fair. Well, we're going to go over it in nitty-gritty detail, all of the playoff matchups. We'll talk about the implications for the teams that won and lost. At the end of it all, we can kind of look forward as we head into the player break over what might happen for the rest of 2025. If you guys have been enjoying these podcasts, Hold the Angle will be coming to you more often as we go forward, but not necessarily around the Major. We'll be picking up for several topics like roster mania. As we get back into the events, we'll try and make it a more regular thing. If you guys have enjoyed the podcast, you can show me by leaving a like, leaving a comment down below, and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Helps out immensely in the YouTube algorithm and helping me reach 10,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Most of all, you need to go follow Tony and Vincent on their social medias in the description down below as well, and make sure they get their support. A bunch of stuff's going to be coming out on Tony's channel over the player break, hopefully, and there's going to be a lot of good stuff coming down the pipe. If you guys enjoy the kind of content, that's what you can do down there. And lastly, before we get started, let's go ahead and thank today's sponsor. This video is sponsored by SkinsMonkey, a CS2 trading website. You put in the skins that you want to trade, you select what you want, you use my code LionHeartZ for up to $5 off, or click the top link in the description, and boom, new drip.
Nice.
You can also use my code for a 35% deposit bonus if you want to buy with real money. And they have a free section with cool giveaways. So check the top link in the description, use my code to buy 15 Dragon Lores to let them know I sent you their way, and thank you to SkinsMonkey for sponsoring this video. Hey guys, just a little addendum before the podcast starts. Usually I record music in the background while we do this, and I forgot. So there's no music in this one. Apologies, a little bit of empty air in the background. We will fix that for following podcasts. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this last episode of the Major coverage for Hold the Angle. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you soon. All right, so first things first, like with our other podcasts around the Major, we're going to talk a little bit about the pick'ems and kind of some of the vibes around the event first off. Obviously, Vincent, you're the only one of us who was actually there. What was it like being in the arena for all 4 days?
So being there in the arena was actually fantastic. I have some criticisms that I'm gonna touch on here in a minute, but like the vibes in the arena were actually amazing. I feel like this was another really strong showing of like we should have events here in the US. I know there's like a big conversation about that, but like the crowd delivered, everybody was into it. There was a ton of like fun chants and everything that was happening there. I think that we came out and we showed out. So like inside of the arena itself, it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it immensely. And like comparing and contrasting, I was in Atlanta in 2017, and this was like I would say 3 times, maybe even 4 times the scale. And you could feel it whenever you're in the arena. Granted, there was some things that could have been better. There was like a lot of question marks about like food and pricing and stuff that was a little bit absurd. In all honesty, it felt kind of like the Moody Center staff was a little bit disconnected from the from like what Blast maybe wanted, and to a certain extent that's expected, but things like beer being like $16 or $17.
Wow, dude.
Wow.
Yeah. Red Bulls being like $9 and water being like $6. That was pretty disappointing, to be honest, especially when like off the rip there was no reentry allowed. That changed I think almost immediately. I didn't try on day 1, but on like day 2 and beyond, you could reenter, but you had to like you couldn't just leave and come back. You had to specifically tell go through one entrance, and if you didn't let them know, then you couldn't get back in. It was just really disconnected. It didn't feel like it was well planned, because I don't think it was. I don't think initially they were planning to allow that. So like those two things combined were a little bit frustrating. But outside of that, I think the venue experience was a lot of fun. It could have been a little bit better planning with some of the booths, like trying to get around and maneuver around, especially like the lower ring, not the floor, but the lower ring. area was super tight. They had a bunch of booths, which were really cool, like a ton of different both sponsor booths and team booths. Like they had a liquid booth. I know that there was a bunch of stuff going on, and I think that those were really fun. But it also meant that when there was a large amount of people trying to move around that outside area at one time, sometimes it would like get to the point where it was like standstill. You were like in traffic almost, but just standing there and trying to move your way through. It was not too bad, but I think it could have been handled a little better if the booths were like placed in like one more centralized location, so that people didn't end up getting in there. But otherwise, I had an awesome time. I was really impressed with like the level of production that that they had. I've never actually been to a Blast event, and I was super impressed from like the production perspective of like what they were able to do, how they were able to do it, and even beyond that, like there was some like cool tech that I noticed where I don't know if this was the case on the stream because I never watched on the stream, just in the venue, but like they were where you could like see through smokes on screen, and like you could see the outline of what was behind those smokes. So if somebody was like behind it, it was pretty interesting. It was pretty cool.
Really interesting. That's actually wasn't on the stream at all, at least not that I saw. That's like some new spectator tech that I haven't heard about. That's actually really sick.
Yeah, I don't honestly remember even, dude. It's kind of all becoming a blur with all the things I've had going on. I had things going on over top of the majors, so I didn't even get to watch a majority of playoffs, which is like frown.
Unfortunate, but I mean, what are you gonna do? You gonna say no to your brother's wedding? That might be, sometimes priorities kind of pop up.
Yeah, a little bit more important.
Unfortunately, the last minute idea of having the wedding inside of the venue during the major just couldn't make that one happen. Wants to save that one for the next wedding.
Yeah. I said if he ever gets married again, he's paying for me to go to the major, and I'm going there.
Yeah, it kind of just touched on some of the things you said there, Vincent. I've always been a proponent, and granted, I've never gone to an event, nor have I ever organized an event. So obviously, just kind of speaking from a totally outside perspective, the idea that they were even going to say you can't re-enter the venue to begin with is fucking asinine to me. Like these days are 8 hours long. Like if you're there for both matches in the quarterfinals and you're there for the show beforehand, you're there all day. You're gonna need to leave at some point. So there's just like people want to move. They want to get outside, get some fresh air. You're not gonna want to be in a stuffy arena in Texas for 8 hours a day. Like it's just people should be allowed to go in and out. Like I don't understand why that's ever been an issue outside like I guess logistics. But if you could show the ticket, you show that you have the day pass, I don't really see why that's an issue.
Yeah, and there was a couple. I think this really was like I said, a disconnect between like some of the security requirements and what Blast would have liked. Like I had a friend who like had this pretty awesome sign that that she had like drawn like on, and it was a sign from the event. But she took it out and then brought it back on day 2. And like the security just didn't want to let her through with the sign that is from the event.
I saw that on Twitter.
Yeah, and eventually it got resolved, and I heard a couple of different examples of that kind of thing where like security wanted to do something and then the person was just like no and kept saying no and was being reasonable, and then eventually they just kind of gave up or whatever. It was just like that kind of stuff was very annoying, and I think that it could be rectified with just a little bit better coordination.
That's fair.
In general with like because it's the venue staff that are doing that, and listen, we got to be very respectful of them. That's a hard job, and I would never want to do that job. At the same time, I think Blast needs to do a better job of communicating kind of like what they want from their event and trying to push back on some of the more absurd things.
Yeah, it's good criticism for the future though, and these things are worth bringing up. I do think venues, this has always been a thing, any event you're gonna go to, concert or whatever, just too expensive, man. Dude, $16 for a beer? Are you fucking kidding me? Like, I've always been a big proponent. You shouldn't charge for water if you have, like, water refill stations. I understand, like, bottled water you have to pay for. But, like, again, people are there all day, man. They gotta have water. Like, contrary to what many people might say, you can't live on just beer and nachos for an entire 10-hour day in an event.
Well, it gets to the point where I can only imagine how many people kind of had to make a choice between beer and water. And I guarantee you a majority of people said, well, the less money I spend on water, the more money I'll have for beer. So
yeah. No, it's just fucking it's weird, man.
And I'm one of those people. Shout out to me.
Shout out to Tony. Alcoholic, confirmed.
It's true.
Shout out the one guy who's sitting behind me, in the row behind me, who I like walked out at the end of one of the days, and I'm not kidding, maybe had like 8 beers, like empty beer cans under his seat.
What a
And
champion.
I was like, bro just spent like $200 to drink all throughout the day.
Well, hell yeah, man.
God give it right, brother. This is Texas. This is freedom personified.
You can't take that away from me or anyone else.
Just to kind of keep things moving, overall, I think that the presentation, they nailed it. I thought the like the beauty shots of the arena were sick. The stage layout looked great. I also people were kind of like clowning the like inflatable T models on the other side of the screen, but I thought they looked cool. I personally didn't have a problem with that.
I saw people praising them too. I thought I saw a good amount of praise.
I thought they were like a visual effect first. I didn't think they were actually there in the arena.
Yeah.
So like that being like a practical thing, I thought was actually pretty sick.
And Blast will make you think that sometimes with a lot of different things that they have at their events, including like the little floating like logos they have sometimes on desk segments behind them. I thought those were physical.
Yeah, exactly. Like
so it's like the reverse effect.
Yeah, listen, I thought that they were. I was like halfway there. I was like, they aren't that cool, but they're also not as lame as people were like suggesting. But like other big moments, like the I'm gonna get nerdy here for a second. Like the shot composition, the way that they had the cameras moving with like the walkouts and giving everyone on like not there in the arena a sense of scale about how big it was and how incredible those like walkout moments were, along with having the desk out in the entry area that was right at like the east entrance, and it was very cool. I think that those little details are something that Blast like generally nails pretty well anyway, but like really nailed on this event.
Oh yeah, the whole presentation of everything I thought was really sick. That having the players come up from below the floor, very like WWE-esque. You know, Apex doing the middle finger on the way up on the finals, Fallen wearing the sunglasses, like all that was really, really cool. I don't know how they did this, but the real-time slow-mo effect they were doing on the player walkouts, that was sick. I don't even know how the fuck you do that, but it was really cool.
I only found out about that afterward, obviously, but yeah, I think it's pretty incredible that they do that. I assume it's just like a super high frame rate camera that they slow down with a replay machine. Like that's the only way that I can.
Yeah, but it's like near real
happening.
time. Like even like there were a couple of shots where you could see the screen as the players were walking up, and you'd see the slow mo effect still happening. Like they were shooting that shit as close to real time as you really could. It was super cool. Anyways, I think Blast nailed all that stuff. I think the major, like, one-off as close to without a hitch as you could ask for. Moving into the pick'em section, obviously, did anyone here end up with a gold coin? Because I got screwed immediately. Quarterfinals killed me. Yeah. Yep.
Not me.
It just, the major, of course, continued to deliver upsets out of nowhere. So far, the only person I've seen pop up with a diamond coin anywhere is Prius. Has anyone seen anyone else say they have a diamond coin?
No, also no.
Oh, dude.
Yeah,
I
haven't seen anyone.
There can't be more than, I would say, this is really giving a lot of room here. If there's more than 1,000 diamond coins, I would be surprised.
1,000? Yeah. Let's. Can we get numbers on that? Does Valve have like that kind of record that they can just show us? That'd be cool.
They definitely do. I wish they would show us.
It would be really sick, actually. I think Blast had their predictors going into the semis at like, or into the quarters. It was like less than 2%. Had like a chance for diamonds at the start of the quarterfinals. There's no way that survived the first day.
Just the way I like my milk.
Yeah,
I think it's actually
kind
of interesting.
Yeah, for real, rotten.
I think it's kind of interesting actually, because unlike other majors where like you just might be dumb if you like picked one thing or the other, I actually think there was like a lot of reasonable arguments for a bunch of these results, and it just so happened that like there was so many of those things happening in a row where like maybe it was a 50-50 or like a 60-40, and like you could have gone one way or the other, and so many of those things were like right down the middle or a slight surprise. That's what is so hard about getting pick'ems right in this major. I think it's actually not that crazy to have gotten there now that I think about it in retrospect.
Yeah,
we were talking about it.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, because we were talking about it earlier, because this is kind of what brought it up in our discussion in the first place in our little text chat, is that I quite literally had a world where I could have been a diamond coin owner, and the only thing I needed, well, not only thing, but the one definite thing that I needed was in every single stage one of the 3 games to go the other way. Lo and behold, I watch all 3 games with my head in my hands and my thumb in my mouth, and nothing, dude. Not a single one.
Yeah, I think that's actually the craziest part, is that it's not like any of the results in isolation are like that extreme. Like Vitality losing the first best of 1 when they, haven't played for a few weeks, in isolation, totally plausible. But everything before that, the domino effect also happening on top, is where just like the probabilities had to spin out of control. I would love to know what Prius's picks were in all the previous stages and know where his thought process was.
Yeah, to talk to him about it would probably be a little bit more interesting than it would be to just see the thing. But maybe he was like, I picked on vibes.
Yeah, and listen, his vibes were correct. Getting into it though. Getting into it though, we're gonna break down. We're gonna go through each of the matchups in the playoffs, talk a little bit about what happened, and then some of the narratives coming out of it. We're gonna start off with the quarterfinals. We're going in order of how they played out. The very first quarterfinal of the Austin Major playoffs was Spirit versus MOUZ. For most people, one of the most exciting matchups in the entire playoff bracket, with how we ended up with this lopsided situation with 3 of the top teams on one side. Going into this, I had Spirit to win. Not only just off of like a personal bias perspective, but also how both teams had played in the previous group stage. I was, MOUZ had started off so slow. They seemed very unconfident. Some of the interviews coming out of the group stage also did not really give much faith. And on the other side of it, MOUZ with, one of yet another come from behind insane victory that shows that they're not chokers anymore. That narrative is dead.
Yeah, this was one of the few games I actually did get to watch. Well, I say few. I watched a majority of everything. I worded myself improperly before. It was the semifinals I was more missing. But the quarterfinals, I caught almost every, if not every map that was played. And that game was like, I remember I tweeted out 2 different tweets, and it was within the span of maybe 4 or 5 rounds. And the first tweet was, and I quote, "What the fuck are Spirit doing?"
Yep.
And then the retweet was, "What the fuck are MOUZ doing?"
Yeah.
It went from clutches that Spirit of all teams, with the individuals that they have who rely on their facts to get multi-kills, lose 5v2s, and all of a sudden the script is flipped, and now it's MOUZ Sports who are throwing the clutch rounds in which they have no right doing. And it seemed like there was no control of the game from map 1 off the get-go. I feel like Mirage was kind of a statement game that, honest and truthfully, I think Spirit coming out over top of, I think that they absolutely had no right losing this best of 3.
Yeah. Vincent, what's your take on the surface?
So, yeah, I was in that same headspace, I think, of like, how are we doing this? I want to give more credit maybe to MOUZ though at the beginning, because I think that they played really well to kind of like start that game off.
Well, they were definitively better.
True.
Yeah, when we get into overtime though, that's where things start to fall apart for MOUZ in a way that like what made me want to pull my hair out.
Yeah.
Multiple times they're tossing 4-on-2s. And like, you got to give some credit to Spirit on those, but like, honest and truthfully, I watched it, bro. It was more about bad positioning and like playing not to lose rather than playing to win for MOUZ in those types of situations. And it was every fucking clutch in overtime, every single one. It felt like it went towards Spirit. Magic's had some huge, crazy moments in overtime, and those yeah, and in those like 4-on-2s that MOUZ should have won. If they do win those, they win this map, and they win the series almost certainly. Based on how things went maybe into Dust 2. But like I didn't see that happen. Spirit was able to make that adjustment, and the fact that they go out to lose that in reverse sweep fashion is just it's absurd.
Yeah. This entire series was Spirit didn't know what the fuck they were doing on T side, and Spirit were just God's gift to clutching on the CT side. That's the only way to go about it. Spirit were awful on their T sides on all 3 maps, and then just Magix and Zontix won 4 1vx clutches on Mirage. 4. Zontix and Magix. Not Donk, not Shiro, Zontix and Magix. Unbelievable. Unbelievable shit. Yeah.
And I guess not contrary of that, but like the people who were on the other side of that same coin, was it, I think Sphinx and Exertion, I think, were like that same duo in many of those instances, and it was a battle of like who was going to get a third teammate to show up on server at that point, or who of the two of the duo is just going to kind of crap out after long enough of giving their everything. And yeah, I mean, I guess the war of attrition was won, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Donk was having an insane individual game to start. Like, he just blew up in terms of getting just kill after kill after kill, but then just petered off a little bit, and that's what opened up regulation for Mouse to potentially run away with the map. But then he just turned back online by the finish line, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah,
which is
it's more or less
important
the same
because
story.
his T side is something that he was running into a brick wall on T side in a terrible way, constantly losing first duels, flying up apartments and dying in the first 15 seconds when his teammates haven't even made contact or set up an execute.
Yeah, no, I mean, as much as I am, just 100% a Donk Glazer at this point,
Sure.
this was Donk kind of hitting the wall. The way you put it, I think, is pretty perfect. There were just so many moments where it felt like he was forcing the issue. I feel like he was forcing the issue because there was no one else behind him. Like, Shiro did not have a good series, did not have a good first game. And Shiro's been so good as of late, and it really was like, you could feel the lack of his impact and how much more it felt like Donk had to try and get a triple kill every single round just to get them over the line, especially on those T sides. And it kind of comes back to my criticisms. Sorry, it comes back to my criticisms of Chopper that they're so one note that if they don't have the X factor of Shiro's clutching, that it's very easy for Donk to kind of get funneled into this way where if he doesn't go for hero plays, they have nothing.
I was going to ask Vincent because he was in the room. He could kind of feel the energy, and he also obviously saw the players' faces both physically in some capacity as well as on the screens blown up. Do you think that the way that Donk plays is influenced by tilt too much?
I mean, I definitely think it influences him. I think that there's like a very tight window of like just enough and too much. You know what I mean? And I think we've seen that in the past with other players, like with Apex. Actually, I think we've seen that before. And I think he's just a young guy who sometimes it gets to the point where it's too much. And I think in these deep games, that can happen. And I think that we got to give him a little bit of time and space because he is still like really young, you know. So yes, but most of the time I think it can be a positive. It's just in these like deep moments, I think it kind of goes maybe slightly too far the other way. That's kind of where I see it at the very least.
Yeah. So if I can lead us along into the next thing really quickly, is that there's rumors going around now.
Can I add one more thing here?
Yes, absolutely. Lay it on.
Yeah, so I just want to like go back and shout out Torji though. I'll probably talk a little bit about this in their second game and their semifinal game too. But like, bro, to me, Torji actually picked him up and not actually in the server necessarily put them on the back, but like emotionally led this team to make this reverse sweep happen. That's kind of what I think going out of this. I just think that he's done such a great job of being able to like be the emotional weather vane for this team, or he can like turn it on and put it all in there and rally the troops, so to speak. I really think that he deserves a lot of credit for Mal's making that comeback.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
Real quick before we get too far into the weeds about spirit changes, I just want to touch on quickly the other two maps. I think the story for both those two maps can be very succinctly summarized as Spirit looked good in the first halves because they were on CT sides. And as soon as they got onto the T sides, they could not figure it out. They hit a brick wall that Maus were able to navigate very well because of their team coordination. And just like what you're saying, to me, it almost feels like Brolin's kind of like IGL in name only. The leader of that Maus team is Torji. He very clearly is the leader emotionally. And the way he rallied them after that first half, especially on Nuke when they were down 8-4, incredible stuff. Like it can't be said enough. Like Brolin got one kill through the first half, and they won the game while holding Spirit to only 2 T rounds. Spirit with Donk to 2 T rounds.
Here, a little fun fact. Across the best of 3, on CT side in particular, to add on to the point that you were discussing about the T sides that Spirit were posting, Mouse Sports across all 3 maps had their top 4 players within, on CT side only, 5 kills from the first to 4th player on CT side. It was plus 12 for Exertion, plus 13 for Jimmy, plus 12 for Spinks, and plus 13 for Torzi. That is incredible spread, even if it wasn't across, each map to level it all out. At the end of the day, each player in their position was able to handle whatever Spirit were throwing at them, whether it be for reasons of them maybe calling improperly, making poor decisions, or that mouse boards were just ready for whatever coming their way as role players, dude. This is probably the most even spread that any team has across their four players that aren't an in-game leader, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
But that's that.
So real quick, touch about potential Spirit rumors.
Yes. Yeah. So let's I think start with you because you have been kind of singing the praises of two specific players, or at least two to go, and you
Yeah.
have an idea of who you'd bring in before we go into what is potentially also just not true at all, according to some people.
Yeah, so I mean, it's very clearly it's Magix or Chopper. I would prefer both. I think long term, it's easier to replace Magix first and keep Chopper around just for the sake of the system. But I'm pretty firm on Chopper has kind of not quite like Major has kind of reached his peak as an IGL. I don't really see him evolving his like depth of strategy much more than he already has. And so I think you have to look someone who's younger, a little bit more innovative, someone who's a bit just a bit better, I think, navigating a more complex system. And for me, obviously, it's going to be Bubblesj. He fits pretty much everything Spirit wants. He's a bit younger than Chopper. I don't really think that Bet Boom would be like an unreasonable like get in terms of like price point for Bubblesj. And I think he would fit what Spirit want in the future perfectly. For Magix, though, there's definitely a lot of names being kicked around. There was a rumor about, I believe it was Zway, Resalt. What were the two other names?
If you actually want to look into the Discord here that we have,
Yes.
I've sent a little graphic that you could even put on screen if you really like while we're talking about it, so people can just understand what the rumors are. These are rumors, everyone.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. It was Perfecto, Makujin, as well as MagnaJez are also kind of the rumored replacements for Team Spirit. Nothing confirmed as of yet. We don't know where they're gonna go. Kind of looking at all those for me. I'm kind of most worried about a potential Perfecto swap. That's also because I don't really think Zontix is the problem. I feel like jumping the gun to get rid of Zontix doesn't really make much sense.
I think it's true. I don't think it's. I think out of everything, that is the least true that
Yeah.
we've seen from these rumors, because they're always rumors, and it's always fun to talk about them and be like, well, what if? Because if you told me a year ago this, I'd be like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, it's just been too long since he played. I don't know what to think. Like, it's kind of like similar to being hesitant about Simple. Once you've been gone for a certain amount of time, I think it's fair to question whether you get back to your peak or not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I also think that it's really important to keep in mind that like Perfecto has been open to offers for like a year and a half or whatever it's been.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Like okay, but like he's actively been courting offers, and presumably, if there's been interest, he's probably played some scrims. He's probably stepped in and like at least like started to have that conversation. You know what I mean? And the fact that's never come to anything, I think that adds to the worries that you bring up there.
He's been a free
about,
agent for 2 months, by the way, just for
I know,
clarity's sake.
Unrestricted free agent for 2 months, but been
Right.
on the bench and open to offers, and Cloud9 was communicating that was the case for a lot longer.
Right.
So
He was actually playing in a couple of little mixed teams they were letting him play in towards the beginning of the year. And he looked actually incredible. For every game that I watched, he was actually blowing tier 2 away, and I love to see that.
That's fair. That's actually a pretty good sign then. I just don't know. He feels like a bigger question mark, and he will come in for Zontix's roles, and I don't think Zontix is like your most immediate problem. So like I think for me, if you're gonna do nothing and you're just gonna keep Chomper, I think MagnaJez makes the most sense because he's incredibly good friends with Donk. I don't think you'd have to worry about like a culture issue, and he's a good enough player to just be significantly better than Magix like out the gate.
What is the most significant problem for you?
Well, I think long term it is Chopper. I think they're limited by their strats. I don't think you're wanting for firepower. I think Donk and Shiro is good enough to be the best duo in the world. Like you
I don't
have
think that's
enough
inherently wrong. I don't think that's inherently wrong.
I don't think so either. But I also think that if we have somebody that you're able to get that's like a pound for pound upgrade in Zontix's roles, i.e., like on paper, Perfecto could be like. And then in addition to that, we could also just like upgrade someone else. If you're talking about like MagnaJez, I think that's like the most exciting upgrade to me. It could be MagnaJez. I think that it's like a lot easier to do that because then Donk and Shiro just keep doing what they're gonna do. And then you bring in two people who have, at least in Perfecto's position, like not recently, but like proven that he can do it and do it consistently.
Right, I guess it's a question of how many moves, right? Because you can really only make 2 within the VRS, so you have to kind of pick 2. And honestly, making 2 at the same time, Tony, you brought this up before, making 2 moves at once can be a bit drastic just in terms of like a shift of team culture. So I guess if you want to make the safest move, it's replace Magix with somebody else. If you want to make what I think is the best long-term move, it's replace Chomper and Magix. If you were going to like clean the board, then I guess if you were really dedicated to Chomper, I could understand maybe trying Magix and Zontix and replacing those guys with like Perfecto and somebody else. But I feel like that'd be like a lateral move, not necessarily like a strict improvement.
Yeah, I think talking on the thing that I would do. Like if I had the power to make 1 or 2 moves, and who would I bring in? I would make 1 move. I would replace Magix, and I would attempt to find somebody who is an aggressive rifler willing to play behind, a side, or in front at any given point to donk. And at that point, if that player can cook, if he can even be serviceable at that stage, I think anybody should be able to do anything with donk being, running right in front of him. So
Yeah.
I think that that's where I lie with that team and what I would do. And I think that in the future will probably get news pretty soon.
Yeah. I mean, overall, I think it's a disappointing result. I had Spirit at least making that semifinals against Vitality. I think they would have given Vitality actually a pretty solid game. But I don't know. They were looking really good in the group stage, and their T-side massively disappointed. I think they were the favorites in that matchup. I know Mouse has beaten them more this year, which is fair. But in the context of just play at Austin, they were the favorites to me, and they did not deliver, in my opinion. Any kind of final thoughts on that?
I guess I disagree that they were favorites. I think Mouse were favorites there, but
I think Mouse had to be favorites, but for me, I saw it more as a 50-50.
Sure.
And I think that in general, this was kind of what I said in the group stage was that to me, Mouse have gotten over their quote unquote choking, and I think this proves it.
That's fair.
Again.
All right. Well, moving on. Probably, arguably, the other massive disappointment for the quarterfinals was Furia losing to Pain. I think everyone had Furia just off narrative winning this series, and Pain really proved a lot of people wrong. They played so good in this game. Coming from behind after Moladoy had that massive debut showing on the stage. He looked so good on Nuke, and then they just handled him. They handled him so soundly on Anubis, and it was a great overtime win on Inferno. I'm actually happy with both outcomes here because I legitimately really like both these rosters. But I think Furia could have been the cooler story and maybe more competitive into the Mongols. Kind of more on that in a minute. But just kind of on the surface, what were you guys' thoughts kind of coming out of this game?
Vincent, if you want to let in on that one while I wrap my head.
Okay, so I have two sides of this, right? First and foremost, I think maybe like Tony will talk about it more, but I think Tony, if you saw the previous conversation that we had about Pain, I think Tony was very clearly right about that. About this team just getting some time to ramp up. So as much as I was very high on Furia, I think that this isn't a crazy outcome. Second to that, two things. First, on the Moladoy side, I think we really saw the nerves on Anubis, and I know that's maybe a slight cop out, but watching the way that he was just approaching fights and in the game just didn't feel like he had any sort of confidence. I just think Anubis was a holy shit, we're here, and it was a little overwhelming type of thing, especially after winning Nuke.
Yeah, I think
onto
so.
Inferno, I think he bounced back pretty well. But Pain just first and foremost outplayed them, but NQZ, bro, NQZ just
oh my god, he was so good.
Farmed them, man. There was so many of those rounds where I'm oh, so Furia have the right people at the right place. Oh, and the 4-man bracket setup's just gone immediately. All good, I guess. Fine. And then the final point that I have to make about this, I think we finally got to see some of the brief views of Snow that I knew he had. I thought we saw in this game. I was really excited about that. And you're never going to see him farming probably in the roles he's in, but bro, the way that he was emotionally into that game and invested, and having these big moments where he's getting critical double kills or potentially clutches as well, in on many of those situations. I was really a big fan of how Snow performed in this quarterfinal.
Yeah, doesn't jump out from the stats, but he definitely had a couple really impactful B holds, especially on the Inferno CT side, where he was just stuck solo on the side. And yeah, he's playing into Tech 9s on a force buy. But if he just gets one and dies, they'd have 4 alive on the bomb site. But he took 2 or 3. He had a lot of moments like that, where you look at the stat line on HLTV. If you didn't watch the game, it may not jump out to you. But Snow had a very felt impact on Inferno.
Yeah. I guess to talk about maps first, and then just my final on Furia as we get into that. I think I'll talk more about him later, just because he's one of my players I'm keeping my eye on right now as Snow. Is that on Anubis? I think he was good. On Inferno, I think he was good. Was he great on either of them? No. Was he bad on either of them? No. But on Nuke, a liability. Really being abused, frankly. Like, his CT side, abysmal. Getting walked over practically in some of the instances where he needed to be a pillar for this team to be able to say they can do anything, to where once they get that one pick, even if he's not there because he needs to play a different position because he's getting so abused, it just felt like that they were running away with the world. They could do anything they wanted. And that's like not something that can happen on that map in particular, unfortunately, right? To where if they wanted in their pool, and they're getting beat out by a relatively new team tactically pulled together with new roles being scattered across these players, that's a little worrying for me. But again, it's just one worry out of 3 maps where otherwise I think he did really good. The other thing I want to say is Molodoy needed to be here, right? Because that was one of their win conditions this whole time. And after Nuke, I thought it was over. I thought it was completely over. He was at the point of that map the highest rated player in their first ever major playoff debut, ever. Take that into perspective. Simple, no, not him. Zywoo, not him. Donk, not him. It was Molodoy. I thought it was over because if he had one more map even remotely close to that, he just continues to roll, right? You would think at least, but
yeah.
I was so disappointed following into those next 2 maps. Like, to a point where on Anubis, he wasn't even missing all the time. Dude, he was getting so unlucky, turning his back from A to water into E-box because they're splitting B, and then immediately the CT swings the corner after he was posted. Like, so many of those little things in addition to also missing, that had to be a tilter.
Yeah. I think it is exactly kind of what I think I talked about this during our prep for this, that nerves can be a factor. Like, so far, he looks bulletproof, but a studio is different than a stage, and being amongst like your hometown in Kazakhstan is different than being on the major stage in the United States. I think it's actually pretty logical that he was going to have one of those games. I just don't think anyone expected it to be like this severe and like this, like, oh no, he was so bad.
I'd like to see a Launders bad or unlucky on that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that would be interesting. He did recover himself fair enough on Inferno, but really, I think kind of the biggest thing that sticks out to me about that Inferno game is how high the highs were for Furia, especially on that first half, and then how bad their T side was. They just, like, Yukindar, I think he had 15 kills in the first half, and then through regulation, on T side, he had 3.
Yep.
That's unreal. Caserado, I think, only had 1 kill through the T side until he got a nade kill deep in when they were very, very down.
It just sucks that Yukindar should have done enough there. Like, that should have been enough. Even though it wasn't, and you could still point fingers at him because he deservedly needs them, that should have been enough.
It was just a crater back to earth at the worst time for both your players. Molodoy actually did great on that T side. He had their most kills. But it's just like you had the combination of NQZ farming every single kill he possibly could, and then you couldn't get an entry to save your lives for Furia.
What a damn game from NQZ. I remember jumping out of my seat on the CT shots he was hitting on A, just going up and down and up and down.
Really, it was just an incredible performance. Like, Pain earned that comeback because when Furia jump out, I think they were 7-up, 7-0 at one point on the CC side, or 6-0. It just like, okay, game's over. Furia going to the semis, wrap it up. But no, they brought it back in a big way. That's super commendable. I still think this is a win for Furia, like a spiritual win going forward, like making the quarters with your first time with the lineup. I don't really think you can walk away that bitter. Like, your young 18-year-old, never played tier 1 in his life, Opper, had a slip up in his second map ever in a major playoffs.
Oh, you'll take that.
Yeah, you'll take it. I think you're absolutely walking away fine.
I think the only thing that sours that is the fact that, like, bro, if things are slightly different, this could have been like the potentially one of the easiest ways to like a major final ever.
That's true.
I don't think that's not how it ended up working out because Mongols and how they played. So I'm with you. This is a good result for Furia. It's a huge result for Pain. Even though I was really quite disappointed with Pain in the semifinal game. I think that they both kind of hit their peak in both respects.
Yeah. And kind of like broadly narratively, the first day of the quarterfinals was really interesting. The second day of the quarterfinals was very one-sided. Obviously, we started off with Na'Vi versus Vitality, and this was the most clear-cut 2-0 of all time. Like, there was Vitality would have to play with their monitors off for this to go 3 maps, in my opinion. It was Mirage, Nuke, would have been an Inferno decider. Na'Vi tried. They looked okay on Mirage, and they looked better on Nuke. But it felt like every round they won was like through just like pure sheer force of will, whereas every Vitality round win was just like effortless, it felt like. It's just like the difference in firepower was just so extreme.
I don't know that I fully agree. I think Vitality almost did play with their monitor off a little bit in this quarterfinal game. Like, and I think that's what gave Navi the opportunity to do what they did. I think like Navi played their game, like their normal game.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that it was like so effective was was part of the reason why I say that like Vitality. And I think I forget who did the interview. Maybe it was on stage right after. It might have been Apex, but they said like this was not our A game or even our B game, and I think that was true. And the fact that that was enough to overcome Navi is like a little bit telling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I also want to kind of harken back to an interview that Blade had done post their defeat, and kind of tie it into how I felt about it. And I'm glad. I don't know if glad is the word, to see that he also shares the same sentiment. Is that the words that he said were, I can't say that we have some obvious weakness, like a player who is spoiling everything and we can't win because of him. It's hard to make a decision because there's no obvious one, right? I think we all play good at some points. We all make mistakes at some points. So we're all kind of equal. Even if we remove somebody, it won't be like, this guy sucks, he let us down. And that's where I'm at with this. Dude, they ran into the titan of the tournament in the quarterfinals, sure, right? And you can only beat the teams that are in front of you. And effectively, if you beat them, you have a pretty good shot at winning a major. You know what I mean? Like, that is your major win right there, practically on a silver platter in some regards. I mean, it's not to guarantee, but having won that one game would have been everything. And they're in their minds, they're saying to themselves, if we can't beat Vitality, we can't win the major. So it sucks to say, like, oh man, only top 8, man. We were major winners at one point. But then it also sucks to say, well, it was Vitality, because what kind of mentality is that if you do want to be the world's #1?
That's fair. I think if anything,
it's a hard place to be.
Well, the series shows, and I'm tired of people saying this, anyone who's like, oh, Alexi B is the problem again, I don't know what game you're watching, because the strats work. Their strats are still really good. They still have one of the top tier approaches to T-sides in the entire world. The way they navigate Mirage T-side is still, in my mind, first class. It's just they don't have the shooters. They don't have shooters. How are you supposed to win a tournament with no top 20 players? It would be unthinkable, right? And like there were flashes of JL and Bit and Emma in the group stage kind of coming back into forms. Like there was like some hope for them, like, you know, kind of pulling off like a phase Magic run in the playoffs, but they would have needed more. And I just don't think they had it. I just don't think this roster has enough firepower for how good the strats are.
I think that unfortunately that is a little bit true here. And for all the Wonderful haters, I want you guys to go back and look at how well Wonderful played in this series as well.
He's not the problem.
And tell me that he's the problem again, dude. Like just shut the hell up, please.
Yeah.
Because
I don't know who anybody who says that he's the problem is replacing him with, and that pisses me off to no end because they won't have an answer.
Of course not, because there isn't a clear answer, and it's also not true.
Simple,
he's
perfect,
like
simple.
The problem, right? You could say he could be better, but like he's a guy that gives you consistently what you put into him. If you put some resources into him, put him into a position where he can work, he's going to do pretty darn well. He's not going to be Zywoo. He's not going to be, Simple previously. He's not going to be Monacy, but like he's going to be pretty darn good. And unfortunately, I think that as much as I don't want, the story of JL is so cool. I think JL just has to be the guy to go.
Yeah.
Because I agree, it's not Alexi. To suggest after the year they had, last year they had as well, bro, to suggest that like Blade and Alexi's system, like you combine those two guys and to suggest that like that they're the problem is absurd and silly. It's just unfortunately a situation where JL's not doing what he did previously, and that sucks.
I think it goes into it. We can just get right into it. There were some rumors that came out today when we're recording this. They have a courtesy of KRL on stream. And before we get into this, KRL, not the most reliable guy, has a pretty similar track record to Overdrive in the sense that you need to take everything he says with a pinch of salt. But I would say this is more true than not. I just don't know how it's going to materialize. And that's that Navi might be targeting both Emma and JL to leave the roster. I think those two are the correct names. I don't know for sure who you bring in over them, but it's one of those two guys. I would be more leaning towards both.
Yeah, I'm trying to wrap my head around what I would even do with this team if I had power, like we were saying before, because For being completely honest, I think that I would probably take some agency as well, a bit and maybe try to leave and join a different team as opposed to sticking around and hoping that we can find players that will fix our formula, whatever the issue may be. And I think the same could be said for a Wonderful, who will bring another team up probably pretty high. Maybe not a tier 1, but he could probably help make a team like a tier 1.5 roster in due time if he did something along those lines. And again, same could probably be said about... Yeah, there you go. And the same could also kind of be said about Alexi B, low key. Like all these players I think could very well just maybe just, I don't know, go their separate ways if they really wanted, which sucks
so hard to fix them.
The options are Makaze, who I'm like, yeah, all right. That'll probably be interesting and maybe even pretty good, but will it make you a world beater? I don't think so. And if you're removing 2 players as the rumors go by, I really don't know who you're getting as the second guy. So the same issue that sits in place for Wonderful sits in place for everybody, except for maybe a JL for a Makaze, because that one move just won't do it for me.
Makaze seems like the obvious move. Like, it seems like you kind of have to bring him up no matter what. I don't think you want to be in a Kiosuke situation where you let another tier 2 player who's like in your academy system who's clearly this good. You have to give him a shot at some point.
It's worth
you have to see. You have him on contract. At this point, you're desperate for a change. If you don't at least try Makaze, that seems weird to me.
I think that is like the obvious move, and it's the right move. Another shout, by the way, that isn't Makaze, if you're doing like JL and Emma, bro, pick up the Zoogs as well. Like, he's another one of the players in the Navi Junior team. And I know that, like, maybe technically he's not like like Makaze is the standout. And when you watch them play, like, he definitely is like the most interesting prospect. But Dzoogs does things like on the back end that don't show up in stat lines that I really like. And whenever I watch Navi Junior, I'm like singing his praises. I'm talking about like, oh well, you know, the way that he's approached this fight, the way that he's like pushed for information at this critical time. Like, the guy is a smart player in my opinion. So you know, if you're gonna take a shot on somebody, like pick him up. Like, that's the other guy I think that like would be, you know, making sense. I do think that it's like very risky to pick up 2 of your academy players at the same time. So I can understand why they don't want to do that, but they got to do something. I think Makaze JL swap would make a lot of sense.
Well, I want to kind of give, I guess, an additive to that, because if we're going to talk about academy players we would pick up, dude, Krebeni's their in-game leader, and I think fragging-wise, he's actually really, really talented. I think that given the fact that he has so much to look around at, is kind of crazy how much input he has in this roster, and then bringing him into this team as maybe a voice that may be missing with a JL gone, maybe just a vibes guy or an energy guy alongside Alexi B to offer ideas up to the guys who are somewhat quiet, relatively speaking, other than maybe Emma. And, you know, obviously the fact that they're both from the same home country of Kosovo might have a little bit of an added bonus for Makaze, perhaps, as well as having chemistry with his caller. But yeah, that's a hard thing to say. Does Krebeni want to in-game lead? Does he want to play under another in-game leader and maybe gain some experience and perhaps even become the in-game leader of the team someday? Like a Bubblesj situation where he is a fragger, he can shoot.
I really struggle with that. I just think that that's a when you put 2 in-game leaders like side by side like that, I think it's destined to eventually fail. And it's just a matter of like time. And it could succeed in the interim, but like eventually there's going to be a problem. And I think that with Blade being as strong a voice and like hard-lined as he is, I just think that might be too many perspectives with not a lot of room for adjustment, you know?
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I mean, that was kind of the narrative, right, with Alexi B and Emma clashing, is that Emma might be too much of a, like, strong voice secondarily as well to begin with.
If he's happy to do that, then that might be cooking. If not, you know,
it would be a conversation that only they would know how good it would actually really be in our minds. We can only imagine, you know?
Well, I guess,
exactly.
Wrapping it up, Navi have to make a change, and making a change seems... They are probably the hardest team to fix out of like the top 10 who are trying to make changes.
Yeah.
Probably them and Aurora are like the hardest team of like, I don't really know. I don't know what you do to immediately get better. It just seems so difficult. I guess keeping things moving. We have one more quarterfinal here. The one that broke everyone's hearts. We had FaZe versus the Mongols. Team America defeated by the Mongolians. This one is bittersweet because I think everyone loves both these teams to different amounts. And we just wanted FaZe to be more competitive. Like, they're going to go out, we wanted to be with a bang, and it was more with a whimper and wasting godlike Elise clutches is what it feels like.
Man, I have a universal groan.
Yeah, that's a fair summary.
I think that one clutch from LionHeartZ is doing a lot of heavy lifting in your brain there.
Notice he was not good on the first map, but on Anubis, he was keeping them alive.
I don't even feel like outside of that clutch, he was particularly incredible. Like, he was good to like solid, but like the issue with that is that like there was literally nothing else. Like, I mean, I feel like for me, FaZe walk out of this, and the conversation is twofold, right? How do you adjust? Because Elijah is clearly not showing up well enough, consistently enough to warrant the spot he's in this team, right? And you have to ask the question, what changes in order to do that need to be made? And I don't think Simple looked very good either. I think Simple looked pretty bad actually on the stage. And even though he looked good in the Swiss, like I'm thinking in my head that FaZe are going to be making a change probably into the offseason. That's the way I walked out of this, because realistically, Mongols looked like the superior team as a whole. The only thing that's been keeping Mongols down is the fact that Sinzu disappears in the playoffs, and that just didn't happen.
Well, I think the elephant in the room that we're kind of avoiding in order to talk about Elige is that Simple wasn't here. Not only was he not here, he was dying first a lot.
Yeah,
and that's kind of a
fucked up
problem. And his nerves, everybody's already talked about it. His nerves, they were showing in the last LAN. They were showing in part of the group stage before he started to look like he was a studio player once again. And now, unfortunately, he faltered right where he kind of was expected to. Did I expect it to be this hard? No. But I knew it was coming personally, and I felt like this was probably the hurdle they'd overcome, and it was sink or swim in the next game. But yeah, I just didn't really see it here, and it didn't really help to me that Elige was kind of making some of the same mid-round errors. I wouldn't even call them even that this time on CT sides across
mid-round risks that didn't work out.
Yes, risks that the reward didn't pay out, because they were paying out on T side. He looked actually really good on T side, I'll say. Probably the best T-sided player on his team, guaranteed for my money, actually. But I needed more from
that point.
Simple.
I feel like the name that isn't getting thrown around enough in discussions for kind of what went wrong in this game.
Don't say it.
It's Frozen.
Don't say it.
It's Frozen.
Frozen
Was insanely consistent in the group stage, and the best thing that Frozen brings to this team is an ability to finish rounds. Frozen's an insane closer, and I felt like he had a very hard time on both maps closing out situations. Simple and Elige had the most like explosive in-your-face mistakes, but I also felt like Frozen just he was kind of quiet. Like he didn't contribute in the massive way I felt like he was doing in the group stage games. I'm not gonna say it was all his fault, but I do think it was like, unfortunately for FaZe, all three of them did not perform the way they did in the group stage to varying degrees, and that combined, I mean, Kerrigan and Rain are tied for the most, Kerrigan and Elige are tied for the most frags in this series across both maps.
Kerrigan was the highest rated player.
Yeah, that can't happen. Like, that can't happen.
No,
in my mind, all four players deserve some amount of blame, some amount of blame for that.
Yes, okay. Everybody deserves some amount of blame, but let's also put into perspective how roles work. And when the entry players are doing their job well enough, and then you get into a bomb site, right? That's a T side where Frozen should be performing. And for my money, I think that is probably where he lacked in most, just putting out damage and not being to finish off kills. But if we're talking their defenses where his AWPer isn't doing a damn thing, and he's playing in bomb sites practically alone in many instances where he's meant to get 1 or 2 kills, dude, he delivered day in and day out.
Yeah. No, yes, his CT side was
so
great.
It's like
I just want to point
50% of his game was hard.
I just want to point out,
not missing, but hard.
On his T sides on both maps, he went 9 and 18.
Yeah,
like that is he needed to be better on the T sides. I think straight up.
Right? Yeah, for sure.
But my overall hot take is I actually think FaZe. I personally don't want FaZe to do anything other than sign Simple and get in a full offseason to work with him. I don't see who else you bring in as an opera that would be as potentially high impact. I think if you gave this team enough time, I'm more confident they could figure things out than not.
I'd probably keep him for now.
I don't see anyone else you would immediately want, is my point. And maybe it's like, would you consider replacing Rain for like a better fit anchor? I'd be open to that. But I would just give this team time, I think. I wouldn't rush to make anything more hasty than that.
JKS.
I don't think you should replace Rain. I don't think
JKS.
I think Rain like was really actually good in this major.
I think the Rain
and
role things is overblown. I think Rain can figure out his new roles given time.
I
don't even think he's inherently bad in his roles. I think it's just a matter of everybody saying there could be better is the thing.
That's fair.
I think he's been very good to fine in these roles. I think that the biggest issue is Simple being missing. I think you've made a good point about Frozen's T sides. That's fair, but also, bro, like the amount of times that Elige is just like getting them an opening on CT side and then reaggressing on mid on Anubis and just like walking into his.
We did talk about that
exact death, man.
We talked about that exact same thing in the last stage.
Yeah, to be fair, I mean, maybe the stats
on
are
a different game entirely.
Maybe just the stats are kind of lying on this one, but for the T sides, Elige had the least deaths. I perception says that you're watching the game. I think you're right. He did blow a lot of advantages. But also
no,
at the same time,
it's on the CT side that he blows advantages. CT
that's
side
fair.
specifically.
That's fair. Yeah. That's fair. Yeah, I don't know. So, I think it was just Elite. Like FaZe came in and blew both their Achilles on the starting line. Is what it felt like. They didn't get a good jump against the Mongols, and then the Mongols played fantastic. Like this was such an insane series from 9-10. I felt like, and then Senzu had so many good moments as well. Like the Mongols, they blazed a trail all the way to the finals where they felt so dominant.
Yeah, we gotta stop talking about everyone's least favorite team phase. Let's talk about America's team, the Mongols.
Listen, yeah.
Because, dude, they absolutely proved all the doubters wrong in this playoffs, man. For me, there was two things standing in their way, right? And the first and foremost, the biggest one of those is that Senzu has to show up, right? He has to be the same player that he was in the group stage in the playoffs. And bro, that just never happened the entire year, it felt like. And it finally did happen where Senzu is the guy, going into this. Also, though, the other thing that people are talking about, I know 9-10 had an incredible series here, and I think for me, he's always been like a very good opper the whole time. It's Techno's clutching, man. Techno, the amount of times that he is in these near impossible situations and just is making clutches happen. Oh my gosh, dude, it was so incredible to watch.
Dude, I said it. He's literally the Asian reincarnation of Zipnix. I'm convinced. He is the man who just. He's not going to jump off the stats, but he's going to win 2 or 3 clutches in a series. They're like, how the fuck did you win this?
Yeah, I loved what I saw from Techno as well. It's those two things that like put Mongols up, and I think that we need to. I know that everybody was behind FaZe, and I was too. Like that story was really cool, but bro, I am certain that FaZe, though FaZe could have made things happen. Mongols were the favorites in this game if Senzu showed up, and because he did, they played like they were the favorites.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair,
man. They're just so fun. I said it a million times over, and I'll say it again until it's not true. I just love the fact that I can watch all 5 of them and expect something to happen, or at least expect one of the 5 of them that I won't actually know who it is. Who's it going to be today? Who's my gotcha game multi-fragger now?
Yeah, and just kind of put a pin on it. I think Blitz called a fantastic match. That CT side round on Anubis where he calls the mid push and just catches FaZe totally unawares. He had a great read. Like, I think he kind of gets put into the like, oh, you're just fragging IGL. You're a bit of a one on IGL. I've been kind of guilty of that discussion as well. But there's sometimes where, man, they get a really good prep and they get a good read on their opponents and they look really scary because of it. So I guess with that, we can go ahead and start talking about our semifinals. The first one we had was MOUZ versus Vitality, which I think most people were thinking with FaZe gone as like, the true other side of the bracket's favorites in a lot of people's eyes. Most people thought that this was kind of like the grand finals before the grand finals. These are the 2 best teams left in the tournament. This was a very interesting series because all 3 maps were blowouts, which is always a weird back and forth because I think it's hard to, like, that's a close series because it went 3 maps. But none of the 3 maps were themselves close. It's a weird thing to talk about.
I think that's still a really exciting thing to have, though. I think those are exciting games even still, especially when they go all 3. If it was a 2 map where it was a stomp, obviously bleh. But, as you're watching Mousesports, who just got, I wouldn't say blown out on the first map, but definitely differenced. Watch them just mollywop them 13-4 again. You're like, what can happen next? What is the final stop on this train? And I think I speak for everybody here. This was the expected result. I actually did think Mouse would take a map personally,
Yeah.
but I just never saw them being able to win out the long con game against someone like Rops in particular, and I think that just proved to be true.
Yeah, they could have beat them. Like, I think this was a vitality of, I think the thing that's kind of cool about them as a dominant team is that they do drop maps. They don't have that like Astralis quality of just always winning your map pick all the time. So like they will give up a map and make a series interesting. And so the door was open for Mouse, but it's just clear that when it came down to crunch time, Vitality could just like find another level. They're very good at that of just like
Torzi and
waking
Spinks
up.
just got diffed. Torzi and Spinks unfortunately just got diffed.
That's true,
and
but
that
then
is all
also
it comes
on
down
Inferno,
to, because if that
Torzi-
doesn't happen, they win.
That's true. Then also, but Torzi also had a life game on Inferno. So like that's kind of like the give and take of Vitality is my point.
Sure. Which is even kind of a more sad thing to realize that Torgi on Mirage and Train just simply didn't exist.
That's true.
Yeah, he didn't, especially on Train, man. I mean, it was really bad. Also, I just think into like, I know we maybe didn't touch on it, but Brolin had like in the nuke game in the quarterfinal had like 0 kills or something in the first half, and they still won that game. Like I think in general, Brolin like was missing like as an individual, and that's gonna happen a little bit more when you're
More so than Apex though is the question.
Was more missing or what was the question?
Was he more so missing than Apex? Because I think that they were playing about as good as I could have anticipated them both to be adjacently.
Hard disagree. I think Brolin was way more missing than Apex.
Apex has still
in this BO3 you mean? In this BO3 you mean? Yeah.
Yes, and also in like general.
I can agree with in general, but I actually think that in that BO3 I was
like I think the map like Inferno, like Apex was super missing, but on the maps that they won, I thought Apex had some big impact across both of those maps. Less so on Mirage, but big so on Train.
Sure.
And
yeah, actually,
and like at the same time though, let me back up a little bit and say that like my takeaway from this series, being there watching it, I just want to back you up and saying this was a fucking exciting series. Like I don't know,
super exciting. Yeah,
there were some people that were suggesting that it wasn't. Bro, it was electric in there, man. It was so much fun, and to watch like back to back games where someone's having like quote unquote life game. Not really true when like Robs is doing that like consistently, but like, bro, Flames' start to Mirage was insane. Especially after watching him like get farmed on Mirage in the previous day, and not have a good game. That was so much cooler to see than like anything else. And I know that Torji being missing definitely was a big deal. Yimpat being missing definitely a big deal. I'm not downplaying that, but like Vitality were in good form, like very good form on Mirage. You go over to Inferno and then it's Torji who's taking the cake. Like he's just dominating. And to be fair to the rest of Mal's, bro, they in general played like they were not down a map all throughout that. And that's another reason why I want to go back to this point that I'm making, that I think Mal's are not chokers anymore. Like the way they played on Inferno proves that again as another time where I think that it's important that they are showing that they can continue to play these games despite being down, even against the number one team in the world. So yeah. I think that like for me, this game was about like who is having that like I'm the best player in the server game more, and the answer is Vitality.
Yeah,
and also just like literally my last thought, because I'm fresh out for Mouse, is that I think we all kind of knew they had some work going into this, even still that they weren't their finest and most polished selves yet. And they're going to have work to come after it as well with Brolin and his system he's looking to implement. So I'm willing to give them that time.
Yeah, I think ultimately the best way to put it is that it is a very unfortunate parallel to Liquid versus Astralis, where very much Mouse kind of play a very similar brand of Counter-Strike to Vitality. It's just Vitality have, piece for piece, the better pieces. Like, it's just, they are unfortunately a step ahead of you, and you don't have the same X factor that maybe a Falcons or a Spirit might have, just in terms of the raw individuals. So for Mouse, they're going to be the second best team in the world, kind of like no matter what. Unless like Kyosuke gets out the gate and is just like, oh my god, he's like the best tier 1 player we've ever seen or some shit. Like, they're going to be the second best team consistently. They're going to beat everybody else. They might lose to Spirit or Falcons occasionally, but they're going to be roundly better than pretty much every other team they play. Like, they're a fantastic roster.
Bang on.
Agree.
Tony, do you need to step away yet, or are we good to keep going?
No, we can keep going.
Okay. Good cut. And then the other semifinals. I think this had potential to be an absolute banger. And then the Mongols decided that no, the only Pain in the server will be what we deal to you guys, because they dominated. They rolled over Pain.
Yeah, well, I think.
I don't think that it had the potential to be the best game at all.
Well, not like the best game. I think it could have been a very competitive game. I think it could have been a very fun game.
Yeah, I guess I disagree. I think Mongols were always going to blow them away, role for role, player for player. And I don't really think I have a defense that makes sense other than just they are all better individually, like all 5, which is kind of hard to have an open and easy discussion about, but...
That's fair. I guess maybe I rate Pain a little higher than that. I just thought that Pain could, the way they were playing in the tournament, especially, I thought that could have been a close game.
Have I turned you because you didn't feel this way a mere two stages ago?
No. My whole thought was I like Pain as a roster. They've just been bad previously. I was worried about the results earlier in the year. I've been a big believer in the Big Uzera project.
Well, I see through you. I see through those eyes.
I was pretty consistent on that. I said that every time, that I actually really like the roster. Just the last couple of months have been mayhem. I didn't know what kind of form they'd be bringing into Austin because things have been so chaotic.
Well, basically, yes, but also, that also kind of feeds into what I was saying. You didn't really believe in them very much so. So then to turn on a dime and be like, well... I think they can take on the Mongols now. Like, see, that's where I point the finger at you and I say you're crazy.
I feel like maybe I didn't clarify myself correctly on that. When they are playing good, perhaps. Yes, I didn't expect them to get run over like this, especially because of how they played the day before against Furia.
All right.
So let me maybe take a different tact here. I think
different angle.
Yeah, all of the things about Pain, right? I think they were surprising. It was surprising that they were able to make it to the top 8 to begin with. I think also surprising that they were able to beat Furia. And I think the reasons that they were able to do that were like in QZ more than anything else, but also like a pretty consistent level from everyone else. That net didn't happen in the semifinal, bro. Davideus was hot ass garbage, to be honest, and
which was a huge disappointment.
And then Big Uzera was also bad. Like that's a lot more understandable, but also, he's a guy that usually is good for like at least some of those big impact moments in a series, right? He had nothing like that in this game, but. Here's the change of position, right? I think we should be looking at this game not from a what did Pain do wrong, why were Pain so bad. More, we should be looking at this, bro. Mongols were a top 5 team coming into this event. The only thing that was holding them back from everyone putting them, rating them like that was the question of do they show up in playoffs. We got the answer to that in the phase game. So why the fuck would Pain even be in this game? The answer is they shouldn't, they weren't, and they wouldn't be.
That's fair. I guess ultimately it's like, could the Mongols do it in back-to-back days? Would have been my only skepticism going in, because Senzu is still, the weight of what has happened previously is still like there, right? Could Senzu just go missing again and then the doors open? I don't think that's like
plus on that. The things that changed between day one and like the quarterfinal and the semi is that after that, the Mongols were the best, like the favorite team in the event in the venue.
That's true. They definitely had the crowd on their side.
They moved from like being the number one, like the number one least fans in the venue to the number one most fans in the venue from day to day. So like the fact that also was a factor kind of like to me built on the reality that Pain would probably struggle, especially with the fact they have so many so many like newbies in comparison like to the Mongols for like stage games. Like how many times have we seen Pain on a stage like this? Like almost never, and not at all this season.
I guess my expectations going in were that Pain would have put up more of a fight. It is kind of my point. I didn't expect it to be 13-5 on both maps. It is kind of where I'm coming from.
I'm surprised they got that many is where I stand.
That's fair, but maybe that's just on me.
I actually could have expected a 13-0 straight up. Like that was where my head was at. So we're in two different boats.
Yeah, I think Pain were like barely a top 15 team coming into this event, and they ran into like a number 5 team. And
I would have loved to see it.
Like it would have been cool, but I think that this was the way that things should have probably been, and then also all the points I mentioned of like why the Mongols would perform. We're left with this.
Yeah, that's fair. It was definitely like very much a statement win from the Mongols, nothing else. Like, yeah, no, we're here. we can make a run at this. We belong in the grand finals. There's no doubt about that. I won't take anything away from the win. That's for sure.
And I also think Payne felt that way too. I saw them like post the semifinal like at the hotel, like they're out and they didn't look too beaten up about it. I think they knew what was happening.
That's fair. And then that leaves us with I think the grand finals that a lot of people weren't expecting is Vitality versus the Mongols. Going into this, I said there was like an 80-20. That was my feeling. 80% of the time it was gonna be Vitality, but there was definitely a door open with how the Mongols were playing that they could have won this. I don't think that's unreasonable. I saw the vision.
I saw the vision.
Like they're playing so hot, and they're not that far off. They've taken Vitality in close series before, so like the precedent is there. Mongols, this was not going to be. I would have been surprised if this was a 2-map blowout for Vitality going into this.
Yeah. But hear me out though, because this was the vision. The vision was the Mongols have never beaten Vitality on Mirage. They've played it 3 times, not a 1 win. They blew the shit out of them.
Oh my God.
Literally, I couldn't even I saw the trophy in their hands, dude. I'm not even kidding. I thought it was over.
Dude, I think everyone
that's how convinced
thought it was over, dude. 9-10.
I really did.
Like Mazzino gets that. This was the map where Mazzino has the jump down with the MP9 coming off the stairs to kill the bomb plant. Or was that against Payne?
I don't think it was this game.
I don't think it was this game.
Ah, shit, I'm thinking of a different play. I'm sorry. But they just had a lot of emphatic moments. Techno had that huge clutch to kind of get them on the board. Get some early impact from Senzu. 9-10 gets that ace where I feel like the entire country of Mongolia in that moment like sent his energy to him. Like they had everything, and you had ZywOo playing bad. Like ZywOo had a bad second half, not even just like a quiet second half. He had a bad second half. Like if like ZywOo, Mezzi, Flames, they're all just kind of like not there. Like, oh, okay, the door is absolutely open.
But you know where I think they really lost? You know where I think the Mongols really lost this game?
Thought they won it.
The fucking veto.
Why
in the fuck do you ever pick Inferno as the decider when Nuke, the map that you've taken them on, the only one you've ever won? Really? Seriously?
I mean, can I
see
tell
the vision
you why?
on that. I see the vision on it. Go ahead, Vincent.
Bro, the reason why is because you won a close game at fucking Pro League, man. It's Pro League.
And Dallas.
And then they also got stomped, like in Melbourne on that map too. Like I
know exactly why they won Inferno. It's very clear
Dallas.
cut. I think it's very clear cut. They both play it. And Vitality's 2 most recent losses at this event were insanely bad.
That's true, and it was on Inferno. Yeah.
Vitality took 2 very bad losses on Inferno to Mao's and to Legacy, where their T-size didn't just look bad. They looked awful. They looked uncoordinated in a way that Vitality never looks. So honestly, I think Inferno is a fair pick. I think that's a fair pick to go in that situation. And come on, dude. The only reason that Inferno went that badly is because they got kicked in the teeth on Dust 2. Like they literally every amount of like momentum, like the high they were riding coming out of Mirage, they literally got knocked the fuck out on Dust 2. I made this analogy, and I think it's perfect, so I'm gonna use it again. The Mongols are like a boxer in MMA. They just want to throw hooks. They want to just knock your ass out. They're gonna throw punches, they're gonna close in on you no matter what. Vitality got them onto the ground and put them in an arm bar and did not let go until that elbow popped out of the socket. Like, they got choked. They got choked out. Vitality gave them no room to operate on Dust 2 or Inferno.
I want to go back. I want to go back slightly. All right. I want to take issue with the perspective that after Mirage, potentially there was like the vision was there. I at no point, not one in this final, did I ever think Mongols would win the final.
Okay.
Even after that Mirage.
That's fair.
Let me explain why. You're not going to see ZywOo go 9-16 twice in a row.
Yes, I was going to say that.
Was absolutely fucking cooked. There was nothing at all working. There was no way for them to like get into positions because Flames was having such a poor game. Yeah. And then Mezzi was in the same boat. Like I mean, he's a little, it's not so much like on him to initiate that, I don't think, but like in general, the fact that those 3 guys had a game that not only were games to forget, but like were stinkers. I thought, okay, there is zero way that all three of those guys are going to do that again.
Yeah.
Period.
I said it on Twitter. I think it's actually perfect. Vitality can play one bad map. I have never seen them in a best of 3 play 2 bad maps in a row. They are going to bounce back on one of the next maps, and they're going to show you why they're the best. And that was Dust 2. It was like, you could just see when Vitality walked off the stage that the first game didn't matter to them. They're like, okay, it's over. And the only reason I bought into it was like, okay, maybe Mongols just run the momentum and just kind of run the fade, run the ones with Vitality and just kind of duke it out. Like, I thought,
go back and look at the like the interview, like post map 1.
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember exactly what was said, but I remember walking away from hearing that interview feeling like, oh, so basically Vitality don't care that they lost that map.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I expected if Mongols were going to somehow win on Dust 2, which would have been improbable, it was going to be a close game. There's no way they're getting 2 blowouts, right? I just thought that they would be at least a bit more competitive on one of the last 2 maps than what ended up happening. Oh my god. To just kind of get right to it, how fucking baller is it for Apex to carry the first half on Inferno? Like, be definitively the best player on the first half of Inferno. That's actually wild.
It's baller as hell. I mean, I think that, like,
Aura.
I think that Apex, like, deserves so much credit. Like, he's certainly not like the GOAT in-game leader or anything. Like, he's running currently for, like, at best 3rd place, and I think you could even argue
like right now, you mean? Or
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, at best. Like he's not even in the conversation for number 1 right now. But he says, I want to be that guy, and his performances like this, and the way that he was able to show himself in these games, and then call as well, particularly on Dust 2, I think make me feel like that's possible. That he could, in the future, be in the GOAT conversation.
Yeah, I think
He's not far.
I think we kind of jump right into it, kind of like the historical stuff about this major outcome. I do think if there is like a 3rd spot behind Glaive and Kerrigan, it just kind of has to go to Apex at this point. The way he's developed as an IGL over the course of his career since making that switch, it's incredible. And he now has the most dominant single season ever. 7 titles and 7 grand finals. Has the major. It's the first era. I don't care if it's only been 6 months. It's the Vitality era. No one's even like close. And now he's 3 majors deep. 2 as an IGL, 2 as an IGL, right?
Yes.
Yeah, 2. So 2 as an IGL. So he has more than Kerrigan now. For me, Kerrigan is my GOAT for the IGL. It's getting to the point where if you said, no, I think Apex might be it, I could hear the argument and I wouldn't be mad at it.
I have a hot take that I now need to sit on for a second in order to say it without it sounding really, really stupid.
Nah, fire it off, bro. Fire it off.
I think Fallen is ahead of Apex for me still.
Amen, brother.
I think Fallen is still my number 3.
I think that's not unfair.
Because if we're going to do it based on when Apex became an in-game leader, like literally when he started in-game leading, which would have been at the end of 2020, I think that he has still less trophies than Fallen did and the same amount of majors. So right now, as well as the fact that I value Fallen historically as an in-game leader more than I do Apex, he's not far, but I would still take Fallen.
I think that's fair. I don't think that's unreasonable. I think the way things are trending and Apex doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon, he's going to pass Fallen inevitably.
Apex has more. He did it. Apex has more trophies. Never mind. He's my GOAT king.
Okay, fair enough. I think, depending on how the rest of the year goes, because obviously Vitality, even with all the roster changes that are going to happen, they're still going to be the best team until someone proves otherwise. God, dude, just looking for it. This is insane speculation. If they win the next major, then the conversations get uncomfortable pretty quick about a lot of players on that team. Someone in my Discord fired this take off. I think it's actually, I'm very curious about you guys' take on this, just kind of knee-jerk reaction. So I think it was Deadshot on our Discord, said that Rops is the Olaf Meister of this generation.
No. That's terrible. No.
I didn't hate it on the surface.
Well, Rops not an entry fragger. For one, not the world's best rifler right now, for another. So, no.
I see it from the perspective of, like, Olaf was just a rock. he's just like so solid, so consistent. You just know what he's gonna do every single game, and like you can try and stop him, but it just like doesn't matter. Like I feel like
Donk is closer by a mile.
Yeah.
Donk is this era's Olaf.
That's fair.
The reason I think that's like slightly incorrect is because that's not how you play against Robs. It's what Robs can do in situations where he's not advantaged and where he has to make something happen without any setup or support.
Yeah.
That's why Robs is the best.
Robs is this era's Crims from when he was peaking. If we're gonna do a side to side, I mean, that's the closest one I can off the top of my head throw out.
Yeah, maybe that is a better comparison on second thought. I do think like if we were to like draft a perfect team starting tomorrow, obviously you're gonna pick like a Zaiwu, a Donk like right away as like your 100% star player. I feel like if you needed a glue guy for any team just to be the 100% most stable piece in the team, I'm picking Rops like first almost every single time. He's just so consistent, man, and he's so fucking good at everything. I think Pimp said it on the desk after, or it was Mally, one of the two. There's been 33 S tier finals of CS2, and he's been in 16 of them. He's won 11.
That is incredible.
That's fucking
incredible.
wild, bro. He's just so consistent. He's so good, man. Rops is just so good.
I do want to maybe circle back though to like final thoughts here about the final itself. One thing that we haven't touched on quite yet, for me, I like I said, I thought Vitality were going to win this at every stage. That's where I was coming from, and I think that the Mongols, two things happened here that made that near impossible, right? Especially on Inferno, Apex having a great game, but bro, 9-10 just like. Oh, he was lost, man.
Oh, no, dude. There were two clutches on the A site where he missed several shots against Apex exiting fucking Library. And just like, watching him miss those shots is like, no. I just like, you could just like, everyone in that crowd in that moment would have wanted to walk up and give 9-10 a hug. Because he was so good on Mirage. And then he just got put in a box for 2 maps, bro.
Yeah, I think that there was a little bit of stage shock right there, to be honest with you.
Youngest team
for 9-10 in particular,
team in the major, or one of the youngest teams in the major.
Youngest in the major final ever.
Yeah.
So, and listen, that's not a criticism of like him as a player or where he's going to be in the future. It's just going to happen when you have a team as young as this. And I think that in general happened on Dust 2 and Inferno. We just saw like, funny enough, right? Senzu, who was like the one who struggled to like perform on these big stages. He was the one who was like the only one there. But in general, like the same situations, Techno had some big moments. He was still really clutch, even in this final. But it didn't matter. It wasn't enough.
Yeah, Mezzi was also great for Vitality. Like he was just great on Dust 2 and Inferno.
I think that Mezzi to Falcons will be one of history's biggest. Well, that was better than I expected it to be. Moves of all time.
Mezzi to Vitality.
Vitality.
Mezzi to Vitality? Yeah.
Yeah, you said Falcons.
You said Falcons.
Oh,
I know Falcons are buying everybody. Can we cool down with spreading false rumors?
Actually, that's so weird. If I like could fight you to the death on what I said, I would never agree with you.
I got you.
For the sake of us being on a podcast and
we're on the tape.
Yeah, but I think that will definitely go down in history as that.
Yeah, and then Robs to Vitality is just the best roster move ever. Like in terms of results, it's like
oh no, not until you get 4 majors, unfortunately, or 3 majors. You gotta get the 3rd one, or else Magisk wins.
That's fair. I think it's already it's even without the 4 majors, just the run of success is like close.
Oh, need the 3rd one.
Yeah, it's
gotta do it.
It's got to be second then. It's got to be second.
It's second. It's second.
I would love to argue about that, to be honest, but I think
maybe for another time.
I think that's beyond the scope, and I think that there's like my final closing thoughts about this is like I think it would have been tragic, even though I think the Mongols are a really fun story if Vitality didn't win this major after the season that they had.
Yeah,
and I think that they deserved everything, and then the fact that they came out to Austin and the crowd was so against them, bro, so against them.
Yeah.
And it didn't affect them at all. And in fact, it only made them better. It gives them even more. It gives them even more credit than they already had for what is a perfect season, so many trophies, major final, and they did it. Not just against the Mongols, but they beat the crowd too. that's got to be adding a couple of extra points for me to what finalizes the best season of Counter-Strike we've ever seen.
Yeah, all I have to say actually at the end of this is that it was probably my favorite major I've been a part of watching in a long time, and I'm excited for the next one because the first CS2 major didn't really do that for me, honest and truthfully. The second one was just getting there, and now I think I'm there. Now I think I'm with it again. It's been a little while, but I think
That's
we're
fair.
back.
Yeah, I think this major was better than Shanghai and Copenhagen. I think that's absolutely fair. I guess
actually, wait, I'm sorry. Real quick caveat. I think Shanghai's playoffs and onwards was up there. The group stage I just didn't even bother to watch. I wasn't having a good time.
That's fair. I guess one little thing, and then we'll wrap it. Do you think? Because I'm still pretty firm on the simple is the GOAT of Go. Where do you think this puts ZywOo? Do you think we're just getting to the point where there's just too much? ZywOo is the GOAT?
No, I think we can all have this conversation universally, and they don't have to be exclusive to like one player. I think they can all be everyone's individual GOAT. And I don't even care if you say that ZywOo is Go's GOAT, to be honest with you. I really don't even care at this point. I think that it's arguable. It's just, what do you choose to believe and value at the end of the day? What do you weigh?
That's fair. That's fair.
There's so many variables.
I think that's actually a fair way to put it. I kind of want to do a piece of content separately on this that maybe we should just keep it to games. And it's, at least for star players, I think IGL, it's a bit easier because IGL has evolved so much. And like what Kerrigan, Glaive, Apex, whoever else did in CSGO and CS2 is just kind of like way
separate
more.
Them. I agree.
Way more evolved. I think it's just easier with IGL to be like Kerrigan or Glaive is like definitively the best of any version. But with star players are star players. So like if you, I think you kind of have to break those up by game. Is kind of what I'm getting at.
Shout out Jason O'Toole for this one. Device is the GOAT of
that was a
Counter-Strike Global
pretty
Offensive.
cool take, actually.
Disagree.
Actually very defensible. But anyway, I think there's I think it's a little bit less like reasonable to like have a conversation about Go. I think ZywOo is clearly the best player in CS2, and I don't think it's even like I even with Donk, I don't think it's like all that close because Monacy doesn't have the trophies. So
yeah, I just want to see how it develops. And then I guess that's really going to be it. I think overall this is the best major in CS2. One of the best majors in a while, in my opinion. Even going back to like, I think it's better than Paris. I forget what was the major before Paris. Was it Rio?
Antwerp?
Was Rio before? I thought Rio was after Antwerp. Because I got my timelines wrong.
I'm a timeline bad person.
History.
Antwerp was in 2022.
And then Rio was 2023, and so was Paris, correct?
You're right. You're right.
Yeah, so I think this was better than Rio and Paris overall, and at least to my opinion. And also, I think it turned out great considering that I thought after Falcons got eliminated, it was gonna go downhill without like arguably Vitality's best matchup gone that early. But the playoffs still delivered, so hats off to everyone.
The Rio Major was also in 2022, by the way.
Oh, fair enough. Was it still after Antwerp?
I don't know. I don't remember that much, but
okay, fair enough. Anyways, Austin Major good, Vitality good. Thank you guys for watching.
Yeah.
Check out Tony and Vincent in the description down below. Thank you guys for enjoying Hold the Angle. We'll be bringing back more of these, kind of on an inconsistent schedule, so keep an eye out on social media to see when those are going to be popping up. If you guys want to see it more frequently, you can show by leaving a like and a comment. That will inspire us to do it more. Yeah. Thank you to Skins Monkey for sponsoring this video. Check the link in the description. Go check out their website, Trade Your Skins. Thank you to Skins Monkey. Thank you to my channel members. You guys know who you are. We're going to keep this quick because Tony's got to get out of here. Follow me on twitch.tv/LionHeartZ2. We'll see you guys soon in another episode. Tony, Vincent, thank you as always.
Hey
Peace out.
Bye.